So let's begin with our first question. The National Center for Education Statistics says that most often age, especially being over the age of 24, has been the defining characteristic of non-traditional student populations. However, in practice, we know that that definition includes many more aspects than just age alone. So, Terry, first, what does non-traditional mean to you?
So I think one thing that's really important with non-traditionals is to remember that it's not a static definition. It's really more, it varies depending on the campus, depending on local high school preparation, depending on what kind of students are at that campus. And so one of the things I always like to discourage my staff members from doing is seeing it as a monolithic kind of one type of non-traditional students. I think we have kind of degrees of non-traditional nature, and I think it kind of varies even depending on the student, the major, what their goals are for college.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Terry. There are so many different types of non-traditional students that even the idea that age alone would define them is kind of silly. What do you think, Melvin?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that a lot of times people tend to refer to age solely because of wanting to look at one metric. But what we've seen here at Upswing is that for sure we've seen students who are military veterans. We've seen students who, for example, are taking care of their kids or their family members. And of course, we've seen a lot of students who are also working at the same time. And so I think that there's a lot, as Terry mentioned, there's a lot that really comes into this idea of non-traditional students. And as Terry also mentioned, we have to think of what are ways in which we can help support each one of those cohorts. In particular, when you're thinking about, for example, how do we support people who are veterans, we really want to focus on how can we provide them with things like not just access to online resources, but also access to counselors and advisors who understand what it's like to be a returning veteran, to come back to school, and what are some of the just hardships that come around that. Well, a few of the schools that we worked with have certainly had to deal with their fair share of that for sure, and so I think that as we're thinking about non-traditional students, we really want to kind of think about all those different gradations.
That's a really good point and is a really great leeway into our next question is, has the definition of non-traditional changed over time and over your career? Terry, have you seen this fluctuation or this expansion of the definition?
What I notice now is it's very diverse in terms of the skill sets of our students. They could be very good, for example, at using social media and presenting themselves, but then they're still getting started on how to use maybe Word and doing formatting, to write a particular type of paper. So it does seem like there's more diversity there.
Okay, so you're seeing just a whole explosion of different types of students that would be considered non-traditional. Melvin, are you seeing
Yes.
the same thing?
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely agree with Terry there. I actually kind of have a question for Terry alongside those questions or those responses that you gave. You were talking about how there's been so many different types of students. I know that here at Upswing, we've seen there become so many different types of students that kind of, you know, maybe at least partially fit within that definition of non-traditional, that really the vast majority of students end up being quote unquote non-traditional today. Is that also what you're seeing on your campus?
I Yes, definitely. I would say that all students are non-traditional in certain contexts. They perhaps just don't understand how a college syllabus works. They're well prepared, they've got great science, math background, but they've never used a tool like a syllabus to kind of help manage their learning. And so I think you do see that. So it's very much, I think, context-based. And because of that, that's why we rely on people like you, Melvin, at Upswing, because to be able to meet all those needs, and there's so much nuance, it's challenging without the support of our technology.
Yeah, I completely agree for sure. It's one of the things that I found pretty interesting over the years is that as we've worked with different colleges, each one of them is, there are certainly a lot of kind of similarities between many of the colleges that we've partnered with, but each one of them has been so unique in their own different ways, and I think it's because of the makeup of the students. The types of students, for example, that go to college here in Texas are certainly a lot different from the type of students who go to college in, for example, our home state of North Carolina as well, or our original home state of North Carolina. And so what ends up happening is that as we've started to kind of build out our software, we've had to make sure to pay attention to those differences and make sure that we can, help support the non-traditional students by embracing those differences as opposed to ignoring them.
Yes. And I'm thinking of, even we have a lot of students on our campus that are still in high school. So would we define a 16-year-old taking English composition at a community college campus? Is that a traditional or is that a non-traditional? So you get that kind of unique person, and there's so, as you mentioned, the diversity of how we're going to present learning and the options for that in a way that makes sense for that person.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's interesting because we've seen quite a few high school students also come to use services on our platform, and the questions that they ask are just so different. A lot of times, if they're first year students or first generation students, and they're taking dual enrollment courses, they'll be asking questions that are a lot more along the lines of, how do I pay for the classes, or, what does getting tutoring help look like, or things like that, because they're really kind of used to what they would expect in a high school type format. But then, when we look at the students who are not high school age, then all of a sudden, the questions are much more vastly different around things like getting, support for sometimes even just trying to get a ride to school, or getting help with, for example, paying some of the bills that they've had alongside paying for their college courses and things like that. And so we've definitely seen a pretty big difference there. And I think that, I'm not sure if this is what you're seeing as well, Terry, but I know that what we've seen is that the number of high school students, or percentage of high school students, have actually been increasing, I'd say, pretty significantly. When we first started back in 2014, very few of the students that we were working with, or 2013, sorry, very few of the students that we were working with were actually below the age of 18. And now, I would say maybe somewhere close to half of all the students actually fall under the 18 mark, even though we still work with colleges, community colleges and universities for the most part. So that's certainly been, I think, a big trend that we've seen changing pretty significantly over the past, I'd say, couple of years.
Yeah, so in addition to that huge change of younger, maybe high school students in dual enrollment, what other populations are growing or active at your school? What trends are you seeing, Teresa?
So one of the things that's just growing phenomenally, it's not only the high school students, as you mentioned, but our online populations. I'm just surprised at how many students, and maybe it has something to do with as you mentioned, our high school populations coming on college campuses. They're comfortable taking class online, and that's something that when I was a student, an undergraduate student, that would have been so scary. Just the idea. They're very brave in that way. I see them as brave souls because they're investing, education, their time, their money, their efforts, and they're fairly sure. And in technology like Upswing, it's true. We can give them a good educational experience. So I'm shocked at the number of online students. We have online students that live across the street, which is interesting. You would think they would just walk across and come to class. It's the convenience of learning at home.
Yeah, yeah, that is pretty interesting that you have students right across the street who are taking online classes. It actually kind of reminds me of one of the big reasons why I was so interested in starting Upswing in the first place. When I was a kid, my mom actually took classes. We were growing up in Georgia, and so she took classes at a local university, Georgia Southwestern. And because there weren't online classes at that time, I remember that for years we were driving back and forth, after work, after school, just kind of going up and down that road for 45 minutes one way, just to get to the class, and then, heading back later that night. And when I think about, just what, these online courses have been able to afford, it's really changed how people who are looking to get that level of access and degree attainment can actually do. Because, something like this would have, I think, vastly changed the experiences that my parents had to go through in order to attain their degrees. And I think that that's probably a big part of the reason why you're seeing so many online students come online. And I think that's a big part of the reason why here at Upswing we've been trying to work to create technology to kind of keep up with that increased percentage as well.
Yeah, the other population we're seeing a lot of, and I'm not sure if this is true for all your schools, Melvin, but our soldiers, we're seeing a lot of veterans and active military taking, deciding I'm going to go do a bachelor's of applied technology. And that's just a population that I think all of us are always very concerned about serving well. These individuals are serving our country, and we want to make sure we're giving them, services that they deserve. And so just trying to make sure that we can keep up with that. I know that probably keeps your technology team up at night.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Especially because some of the active duty students are also taking these courses overseas, and so so you have to make sure that your technology works not just here in the U.S. but all around the world as well. Um, it's been a handful, but I think that once again being able to create that access is just so vitally important. It's really interesting to hear that you guys are seeing that as well.
Yes. And I think it's part, the military has always been, I think, a wonderful organization in terms of stressing training and up-to-date kind of skills. And I know that I think you're based in Austin. Am I right, Melvin? And I know y'all are getting the futures, the military futures, the new campus that's going to be like updating all of the missiles and the planes and everything, and that's going to be in Texas and Austin. So that's really exciting because that's a whole nother group of learners. The learners that are workforce learners. They're upgrading a certificate. They're kind of making sure that their skills are relevant and current, which is, I think, one of the things we have to offer in a college.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. We're really excited about seeing that program come to Austin for sure. We've actually been inviting people who are students, and especially those students who kind of um, don't look like your traditional student to our office here in Austin, because we want to do a much better job of being able to ask them directly, hey, what's working for you, what's not working for you, and what are the things that you wish that your campuses could do to make your life easier, as for example an active duty or a high school student, etc. And those types of conversations have certainly, I think, been really helpful in pushing forward the types of tools that we've been creating to help support them.
Okay, well, speaking of support, I really want to delve into this topic. What challenges do these types of non traditional students face? Whether it's the overseas veteran, whether it's the case of Melvin's mother driving 45 minutes there and back to classes, or even the online students who live across the street. What challenges do these types of students face?
I know that one of the challenges we face with our students is just making sure, all these populations, are they getting access to their resources in a way that allows them to work ahead of their syllabus? I always hate it when someone comes in after an assignment is due and they say, I didn't know you had, a chat tutoring upswing option available when it was, Sunday night at 11 p.m. I know that's one of our peak times for South Texas college students. That's a lot of times when they have to start their work. So I think making sure that we're timely and not only getting information about the resources, but making sure that they know how to use them. Because it's very easy to see a link to a resource, but knowing that you're confident in how you use it and that you're able to use it crunch time, I think is always challenging.
Okay, so you're seeing that the challenges, it's first access, number one, and then second, application. How can they use these resources in the most effective way possible?
Absolutely.
Okay, what's your take, Melvin?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think a couple of things that we've seen on our side is that with non-traditional students, I think one of the big issues has been around that sense of community. How do you create a sense of community among students that are taking online courses and don't always get the opportunity to meet with their cohort, in a face-to-face setting? Or they can only do tutoring at night, or they are struggling with a math problem and feel that no one really, you know, cares if they are going to succeed or not. And that's not, and we know from working with a lot of our colleges that that's not true. But how do we make it so that the student doesn't think that that's the case? Um, that I think that's been probably one of the big challenges. I know that a lot has been written and talked about around the idea of social and emotional learning, and you really start to see how important that is when you specifically talk about these non-traditional students, because they can, one of our uh, good kind of company partners here in Austin, shown one of the statistics which showed that the average student that dropped out actually had a 3.0 GPA or higher. Um,
Yes, that's true in our institution too.
yeah, so why is that the case? What non-academic factors are affecting these students so that they feel that even as they're doing okay in courses, that they still you know end up thinking that school just isn't right for them, and how do we solve that has certainly been a big challenge that we've been trying to think of here.
Yeah, and I know one of the It's a challenge we face with all of our students is just our communication. Just getting information out to them is very challenging because they're in and off campus or in and off online. And that's one of the struggles that I think almost every college I speak to says we need to do a better job of reaching out to our students. It's like we send emails, we send text messages, but even with that, that's not necessarily building the connection that we need with them. And it's very hard to communicate and connect at the same time. It seems like we always get one or the other.
Oh yeah, definitely. We, I definitely hear you on that one for sure. One of the things that we've really been experimenting with a lot lately is the use of text messaging technology to better approach the students kind of where they live. Just to give you a good kind of, story here about some of our earlier times here at Upswing. We were trying to set up these reminders and things like that for students about upcoming tests and assignments and everything else. And they were all being sent out over email. And we thought, this, of course, this is what students would use and access and all that good stuff. What we found was that actually, the open rates weren't that bad if the students were on campus. But if a student decided, for example, during finals period, we found that open rates for these reminders would drop down to close to zero because since the students were no longer on campus, they just no longer access their campus email addresses. So,
Yes.
so we started thinking how are we going to be able to better connect with and support these students and what we've been finding is that using text messaging technology, not in an onerous way, but in a way that's kind of just in time for the students, has been a really good way to keep them involved and keep them feeling like they're a part of a larger community.
And it's that support because it's very much the confidence you see in a student that knows these are the supports I have and I know how to use them. And like you're saying, I'm getting communication about them. That makes such a huge difference, I think, in the way they shout the semester because I think all of us struggle as students and to push through those last couple of weeks, that's when that nice little timely reminder, I bet, from Upswing, well, don't forget, you have sessions available, tutors available right now. That is to me such, one of the helpful things that I know that you've been a good partner with us in terms of giving us all kinds of templates for sending out messages and materials that we plaster all over our centers. And it's that timeliness. And as you mentioned, I think very well, you're the business person. It's that, just in time, because if you send it too early, it just gets filed under, oh, this is a great thing my college has. And of course, you never want to be late after
Right.
you've submitted something. You could have gotten some feedback on it.
Yeah. Yeah, we're glad you appreciate all the different flyers because we sure keep sending them.
Some of them will like the little small one, and then some of them like the ones that are shaped in the little U's, like the little arrow. To me, it's like a little U. So yeah. It's just, I think they find a place in their binder and they stick it there, and that's where they're comfortable having it. So.
Interesting.
Well, this is a great reminder to send to you guys another big old box of swag. We just got some new bookmarks in, so.
And it's funny that they still like bookmarks when a lot of people are going to electronic books. But there's something about having something in your hand that I think gives you a lot of confidence. Like I've got, Upswing's got me. My institution's got me. I'm on my way to great learning. So something tangible, it can make such a difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to our next topic, kind of in that same vein, is which services in your experience are most impactful to non-traditional students?
I mean, for our students, it's always going to be the tutoring, both that they can get in our centers, but, through Upswing, where they can meet with a tutor, whether it's in person or online. I know that is something that is impactful. In our center, it can be a tutor at Upswing. Just that readjustment of, that's the right definition, but you need to apply it only in the circumstance. That's the kind of those aha moments where they're kind of like, oh, now I understand. That to me is students engaged. So to me, engaging activities, whether it's through a tutor, whether it's through, submitting papers, I know they can submit papers to Upswing. That's the sort of engagement that I think makes them feel like they're moving forward.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I couldn't say it any better. That's exactly what we've seen on our platform as well. What we've noticed is that if we can get a student to just come in the first time, connect with someone, have that real deep connection, just that first time, there's an 80% chance that they're going to come back a second time. And that second time, there's also a major opportunity for the person who they met with to be able to connect with them again. So what we've seen is that it's really about building that relationship, even with technology kind of playing the medium in between both parties. What we've noticed, for example, is that a lot of times students try to find something that allows them to relate to the person on the other end. So whether it's that they speak the same language, or they can speak the same languages, or whether it's sometimes we'll have tutors say, I really like Texas football, and the students like, oh, I like Texas football too. And so just those little things, we always encourage our tutors to do, because creating that connection, creating that kind of affinity for each other allows for, I think, walls to get brought down, and as a result, increased learning to take effect.
One of the things I always forget, Melvin, your comment reminded me of this, is even something, for example, we're talking about college students, but I can tell you when I'm attending a graduation, I see parents, and I see, they're looking for their children, or where can I sit to be close to my children. And when I ask them, well, what college are they at? And I'm thinking, okay, they're with the, arts and sciences, or they're in our STEM college, or they're in business. They're always thinking, no, they're South Texas college graduates. They're this, they're that. So even that idea of college, a single term can have so many definitions,
Yeah.
especially when in different contexts. So that's even a big part of our shared communication. When you send out a reminder and you're using the same language at Upswing that we use at South Texas College, I think that's a way of showing that connection too with our students.
Yeah, most definitely, for sure. And that, I think that's a big part of, that whole idea of creating that connection, and really trying to build upon taking what South Texas College does, and spreading it beyond the campus to all of the online students as well. And I think that those things tend to have strong ripple effects all across the student body, for sure.
Okay, so it seems like the top 3 themes that I'm hearing so far are: number 1, first, the access, as you were saying, Terry. Number 2 is the application, knowing that these resources are available and then going on and using them. And as Melvin was saying, once they log on to Upswing once, there's an 80% chance that they're going to come back. And then number 3 is having that overarching sense of community, investment, and connection, so that these students feel genuinely supported. And so with that in mind, I think moving on to the next question, is technology, is all of these things coalesce and come together in our technology and in other ed tech technologies that we've seen. So Terry, I'd love to get your input on what is the role of technology in this space?
Well, let me tell you, Josh, Melvin will be able to share experiences with you too in this. What at South Texas College, we rely on our technology on Upswing to make that individual kind of personal connection. What I rely on my technology to do is, okay, I've got tutoring, but how do I make a tutoring support system that is perfect for Joe Garcia, my veteran that's taking classes here on campus? I rely on Upswing because I can do all these different things in my center, but it's that technology piece that can somehow just tweak it the tiniest bit so that I want Joe to feel fully supported, and I want him to think, wow, it's almost like Terry Garcia and the CLE and Upswing created the perfect tutoring platform for me. So that's really where I rely on my technology is you all are the ones that allow me to make that a perfect touch.
That's awesome to hear, Terry. That's really good to hear for sure. And I think where I would kind of piggyback on this is to say that, which might sound kind of strange coming from someone who runs a tech company, but technology kind of ends up being the tool, but it's really useful depending on whose hands it's in. And I think that the work that you do down in South Texas College really helps to make it so that a tool like Upswing can be supportive for so many students. I think sometimes campuses can tend to think that maybe a piece of technology is there to kind of solve all their problems, and they don't just kind of set it and forget it. But even when we first created Upswing, we wanted it to be something where it was something to be in partnership with those who were already kind of seeing what's useful and successful on their campuses. Otherwise, it becomes an outsourced kind of tool that's one size fits all sort of thing, and of course we all know that one size doesn't really fit all in education. So what I really like about some of the experiences that we've been able to have here at Upswing is that we've been able to work with people like Terry and so many others who are saying, hey, this is what I'm doing on my campus right now. And then saying, if we can just use your technology to help us to reverberate that, spread what we're already seeing working to more and more students, we think that it can be an even greater success. And that's been what's been exciting, I think, during my time here at Upswing.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really enjoy with Upswing is, our coach is Victoria. And Victoria is so good that if we need something tweaked for our students, we need a limit change, we need something adjusted, I think all my team would definitely say, Swing, that you've always been very responsive. We've always felt like if we have a need, you get your team working pretty quickly on how to deliver that. So I know that you're doing like some new whiteboard stuff, and I know we have some of our technology team signed up for that. But I love that idea, Melvin, because it is a team effort. I think it's not only what we do here, but it's also what you do there that can make the educational experience impactful. That's what makes education an equalizer, is that we can be in South Texas and we can, with the help of Upswing, be offering great tutoring sessions to, our soldiers in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And that is something that excites me every day, and that's where my passion is. I'm an administrator, but I'm not into the administrator stuff all the time. What I'm always about is passion for our students. And so when I see someone that's working with us, a partner, and they're willing, keep their people up at night trying to tweak something for us, I appreciate it, because I see it like, that was my student, or now I'm a student. If that's me, I want somebody who's the job, at least thinking about it and innovating 24 hours a day. And like I said, I've had really good experiences with Victoria, and she's always really good about reaching out to us and making sure that everything's working, optimally for our campus and for our students.
That's so amazing to hear. I'm sure Victoria is going to be doing backflips when we
When we tell her,
that.
yeah, that she got a shout out during our webinar. One of the things that really stood out to me is you used the word equalizer. So I want to share with you guys a quote from Cisco CEO John Chambers. He says that there are two great equalizers in the world. The first is technology, and the second is education. And I think that's something that we feel every day. So in order to close this webinar, I first of all want to thank you so much, Terry, for sharing your perspective.
Yeah, thank you.
And also Melvin for being here.
Sure.
Attendees, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box on the lower right corner. If you have any questions after this webinar, feel free to reach out to us at any time at speak@upswing.io. Thank you, everybody, once again. Have a great day.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.